You brought up 4 interesting points that I would love to cover. First, yeah, you're talking about, like you mentioned, around 650,000 people that you represented when you were on the board of supervisors. I understand that. Behind me, we have a lot of assembly members that represent almost 500,000, and I bet you if you ask them if they feel that their workload is light, they would disagree, and they have a lot of things to do as well. And they work hard, and they have 80 members. I don't think that we have a bicameral system because senators usually have double the size, but you know, we still have the same.
Then what we should do is make the assembly members 160 of them.
No, unicameral.
So anyway, I'm putting in perspective that
That's the argument. The argument you're using, though, is not. You got to give me more than that.
I haven't finished.
I mean, you can't say that a county supervisor cannot represent 620.
Let me answer.
Can I finish the rest of the answers, and then we'll go ahead and answer any more if you have. So my response to you is like, we do have representatives that have 500,000. That's still too much for them, I think. When I served in the assembly, I felt overwhelmed with 500,000. Your second assertion that, you know, state telling local government what to do and getting, you know, and asserting themselves, well, you know, the state always does that. Something falls over, something doesn't work, they insert themselves and take over schools sometimes, school districts. In 1994, they inserted themselves, they took over and helped Orange County when they're in their bankruptcy crisis because they put money where they're investing in the wrong places, they collapsed, they had bankruptcy, the state inserted themselves to try to bail them out. Okay, third, you're saying that now you have the dais has 5 members. It's going to cost money to put it on there, 2 more seats, create office spaces for them. You know, this measure is based on the 2020 census. It won't take effect till 2022. You're talking about a long time from now. If this measure passes in the ballot next year, they'll have plenty of time to prepare for that and make arrangements for that. If there's state money for that, that'd be awesome. I'll work with Mr. Hertzberg, try to get that money for you. But if not, they'll have enough time to plan for it and make space and adjust. Your fourth comment about increasing government, increasing more politicians into these offices, that's not the fact because we're using existing revenues, existing money that's being spent on those five board of supervisors. We're going to expand it over 7 with the same budget. So it's not like you're increasing the budget, it's the same amount of money.
Senator Morlock, do you have a question?
Maybe just to follow up on your thought, Mr. Chair. A few years ago,
we've got a big bunch of people. Yeah,
I was with Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky and 3 former governors. We were at I think the California Club up in LA, and he was commenting about the population. I said, well, in 1889, Orange County did split off. Right. From LA County, you'd have 14 million people right now if we hadn't done that. So I was just curious, either of the authors, were you county supervisors?
No.
Not yet.
So did a particular county request this?
No.
Well, it's been tried before.
Yeah, they can do it on their own. They can. So
yeah.
We
again, LA County is so large that they don't want to let go of the tax base, which we really could have. I mean, we have a mountain range between the Antelope Valley and Los Angeles. So, I mean, every services, whether it's veteran services that the county provides, we have to put our veterans on a bus or help them get down to the county hospitals. And they won't. They will not give us the ability to have a clinic or a hospital in that area. And it's unfortunate. You know, we have one supervisor who represents 2 million people. Just to drive up to the Antelope Valley from the offices is a good hour and a half. So it's not, I'd love to have a separate county, and I'll work with you to try and get that done. But I believe it takes a vote of the county to do that. And I don't know how Orange County got away from LA, but maybe it was.
Well, it was 125 years ago last year. So celebrated our assessment.
Okay, that was a long time ago.
If I had a screen, I could show you the composition of the state when it was formed in 1850. LA County had almost all of Southern California, and it just got chipped away. San Bernardino, San Diego, right. Santa Barbara, Ventura. They all, over the years, chipped away and made LA County actually geographically kind of small. But the issues you're raising, Senator Runner, aren't solved by adding supervisors. They're solved by adding an animal shelter closer to where you are.
You get an animal shelter
Alpine
closer
County
if you've
split
got
up
a
because in the
supervisor
winter, they
advocating
couldn't get to the other side of the Sierras. So we have a county with 1,200 people, you know, which is really remarkable too in our history. But
Yeah, it is.
So I just wonder, Mr. Chair, just to say this, I don't think we've got the right solution. This is like the old saying, this is a solution trying to fix a problem it isn't fixing the problem. So I'll stop.
Quickly, Senator Nguyen and then Senator Bell.
Can I answer some of those before?
Let's let
Okay.
senators ask the questions and then let's close. But I make sure I ask support and opposition. I haven't gotten that far yet. We jumped into it. No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Mendoza, LA County, didn't they ask the voters twice to expand? And didn't it fail by the
once.
voters? In 2000, in 1992, they asked the voters of LA County to expand the Board of Supervisors, and it failed twice by a 2-to-1 margin. So now we're going statewide, imposing on LA County on something that their voters do not want. Why can't we allow each of the counties to do their own ballot initiative individually? Because I'm just saying, you know, the voters don't want it, so.
The voters might have not been educated enough on it. Sometimes the propaganda against the measure was really took a different turn where they kind of misrepresented what the ballot initiative was about. Unfortunately, some voters were misled. But you know what? I think voters for many years have at one point rejected certain measures and at some other point kind of accepted other measures after that. So I think going statewide, people will see the need for having more and better representation in their particular districts. And I'll just refer back to some of the comments from Mr. Morlock where, you know, these supervisors could disenfranchise half of their population, whether it be in another county, it doesn't matter, because they still have a whole pocket of population that's going to get them elected every single time. They don't really care about that part of town, and it happens, unfortunately. So that's why when you make smaller counties and when you have districts that are smaller and closer to the people, you'll have better representation because they're going to be more accountable to them, and they'll be more afraid of losing their seat at the next election. And, you know, yes, I didn't serve as a county board of supervisor, but I've noticed that everybody that has served as the county board of supervisor, especially in these counties that are being affected, well, they love that power and they don't want to give it up. And so they oppose this vehemently. So what they, you know, so I understand why they might be a resistance to it from having people that have served in these counties. But I think that's one of the major reasons why they don't want to give it
Senator
up.
Bell, quickly.
I have a more of a technical question.
Please.
If in terms of this measure, it's based on the 2020 census, and is that the final count that's certified? Okay, so when will that take place? Have you had an estimate on what?
2021. It takes about a year for them to, the ones that.
You think it's a year? Sometimes it takes, I've heard it takes a little longer than that.
Oh, if you look based on the past, on the one that did in 2010, I believe by 2012 the districts were already set up and ready to go.
The reason I'm asking is Santa Clara County, we're at 1.95 million right now. Okay, so whatever the,
We'll work on it,
baby.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it. We'll get you there.
so we're a maybe county. Maybe this will apply to us. And so that's why I'm asking. So the census gets certified. If the census gets certified close to the election timeline, does it go to the next election, or that's a question I have. Sometimes the census, they don't have a schedule that we can honestly rely on, as you know, the way they do censuses. Sometimes it's taken a longer, some shorter. So the question is, if your census gets into the election schedule period, does that push it to the next election under your law?
I will say yes, but if I go based on the 2010 census that just occurred, by 2012, the districts were already drawn up.
Yeah, you have to get the census out to other districts. There's no question about that.
Yeah, so but if it passes next year, the county has to drop the lines anyway. They just have to do it with these parameters, which are going to draw 7 seats instead of 5. And remember, this is the minimum of 7. LA County can choose to go higher if they want.
Well, these other counties don't have the problem that we have. Okay, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yes.
I got it.
They're over the 2 million number, but my county is right on the border, so we'll have to wait
Right.
until we get the final census numbers, and then if it's close to the election, that could cause a sort of a chaotic environment for our county. So I just want to point that out, and there might be something you
Sometimes
can,
they do like kind of like in between a census or like a.
well, they do a preliminary
Right.
census, but then they don't generally base reapportionment on preliminary numbers. That's not usually done, I don't think. So you have to have real numbers.
Let's go. I haven't, we got into this so quickly, I didn't even call for opposition support. Those in support of the measure? Any in opposition to the measure? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's an important question. If you can tailor some of your testimony to the questions that were addressed by the senators, I think we all have evidenced a pretty deep concern and a number of opinions on this, so that would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, Alan Fernandez on behalf of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors here in opposition to the bill. I want to just first start out by saying I think the intent of the authors is laudable. Certainly looking at ways on how to increase the efficacy of elected representation is a good one, certainly. However, I think maybe it was Senator Morlock and others who have expressed it's really the method and manner in which this constitutional amendment attempts to do that, where I think we have concerns and indeed opposition. In many years of lobbying, I've never sort of had it sort of outlined for me so well than in the analysis, and I really want to thank the work of the committee. But truly, we all sometimes, read over the analysis very, very quickly. But this is a well-written analysis, and truly, it is going to condense my remarks today, because all you would have to do is just go point by point down the analysis to really expose the many concerns. On point 1, it says the purpose of the measure, and indeed Senator Morlock already said this, is that where in current law is there a deficiency to increase the size of the Board of Supervisors? Indeed, over the last 4 or 5 decades, this has been attempted in Los Angeles County, and as others have noted, it's failed repeatedly. There have been 4 times, the 60s, the 70s, and in 1992, and in 2000, where this was specifically asked of the voters of Los Angeles.
Come on, man, that's not an argument. We tried term limits 5 times and it got fixed. We tried redistricting 5 times, it got fixed. We've made arguments on all sorts of things. Electorates at different points in history have a right to change their mind. The fact that something historically was tried doesn't mean that you're not going to change it. Plessy versus Ferguson is a law, so you're not going to change it.
Absolutely.
Come on, man, this is an evolving democracy.
Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting that you're wrong in your argument, but that's a dumb argument.
No. Well, let me put a finer point on the argument.
If I can put a fine point on it.
Yeah. No. And Mr. Chairman, your points are very well taken indeed.
We'll move to the next one. We read the analysis.
No, but the point is not that it. No, Senator, it's very important. The point is not that it's failed. The point is that there's a mechanism in law for this to occur, and so that what we're asking is that this be a vote of the people of Los Angeles County to make that determination. As it has been previously, sure, it's failed. Bring it back again and expand it when the voters actually want this expansion to occur. And that's, I think, where the deficiency in this constitutional amendment is because it's placing that vote for, to use the governor's word, Modokians would vote whether or not to increase the representation in LA County. People from Mendocino County, taking it to its logical extension, why wouldn't we then have a constitutional amendment requiring a local region to adopt a sales tax increase for transportation to become a self-help area because it would save the money statewide? Why wouldn't we require a school district to do a locally voter-approved tax increase for school facilities to lessen the amount that we would have to go to the state voters for a state public school bond. The point is,
It's a broader public interest, and sometimes the power structure won't give up power, as Senator Mendoza noted, and they raise money, and they use their power to raise money, and they articulate campaigns that evidently, if each voter, you could sit in their living room, it's not about the truth, and that 73% of all money the state distributes goes to locals, and these are just simply executing either federal or state obligations. And I'm not suggesting you're wrong, but I'm suggesting that it's not that clear.
sure, we would agree. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, what we're saying is that we think the issue of representation is most appropriately had at the local level and for local voters. I would even say that the recent Supreme Court decisions.
We've got civil rights actions where people want districts or non-districts, and they make decisions, and there's broader federal or state interests that are at hand. These are much more complex arguments than the kinds that you make. Those simpleton arguments are what locals do to hang on to their power. This is a much broader question. Whether this fundamentally answers it is another issue that Senator Morlock appropriately asks, but there's a much deeper dive to this than what you're pitching.
And I'm prepared to go to the deep dive with you in that.
No, that's okay. If you're going through the arguments, we got them.
Okay.
But I just want to challenge you a little bit.
Sure, no, I appreciate it, and I encourage it. I guess I would, to that constitutional point, I guess I would refer to 2 days ago.
Witnesses? Huh? Are you supposed to take on witnesses? Can we do that?
Listen, man, this is a democracy. Welcome to the legislature. Of course you can take on witnesses.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and I appreciate that, and I don't actually disagree with any of the points you're raising. What I would say is that 2 days ago, the U.S. Supreme Court, sort of expounded something that I think adds something to this debate. And Justice Ginsburg's opinion in the Arizona case on redistricting, she notes at the end, nothing in the Constitution attempts to endow on the legislature of a state with the power to enact laws in a manner other than that which the Constitution of that state provides for. And indeed, as the analysis indicates, the doctrine of home rule in charter counties provides for locals to decide the representation of their government, and that's what we're...
Didn't the state law create counties? Didn't the state law determine how many members the Board of Supervisors? Isn't that a state determination?
It is.
Is that not part of our law? Didn't we make that? That's why there's 5 in each of the counties except for the city county of San Francisco?
We did.
So how do you respond to that?
Because in that state constitution, it also provides for local governments through the power of charter to determine the representation of its government.
And how did they get the power of charter?
Through the Constitution.
Of the what state?
State of California.
Rest my case. And the next witness, you got anything else? We went back and forth.
Victim.
No, it's just...
Present. Good morning, Chair and members. Dorothy Holzen with the California State Association of Counties. We have an oppose unless amended and have some specific requests. We do appreciate the intent of this measure and also the amendments that will be pursued if this bill moves out of here today and into the next committee. But specifically, we appreciate the Vice Chair's comment that the cost caps must be removed. That is not only a disservice to the new offices that would be created, but also the 5 existing offices. And if the intent of this bill is really to improve representation, improve service, then the cost caps counter that. And then secondly, as was thoroughly discussed earlier with my colleague from Los Angeles, we believe this must remain a local decision and would support this measure moving in that direction, and really appreciate the analysis comments on page 5 and 6. So at this time, we do remain opposed. Thank you.
He's a pretty smart guy.
I know, right?
Yeah, he's very good. Yeah.
Mr. Chair and members, Juliana Voris here on behalf of the Urban Counties Caucus. I did want to answer your question on the county splits. If someone in that county wants to split off and create a new county, it takes a vote of the people who want to split off as well as the county in question. So Los Angeles County, for example, San Fernando Valley, they would both have to vote and get a majority vote to make that happen, which is why it hasn't happened for
I just don't remember
a long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to concur with my colleague from CSAC. My board took an opposed less amended position on May 27th. It was unanimous, and even the counties that aren't affected by the bill raised concern about the state-wide voters telling that 4 or 5 counties, however the bill is amended, how to do their representation in their business. So we, along with CSAC, are asking for it to be amended to remove the cost cap and also to make it a decision by that county voters.
So much. Any others in opposition? Okay.
Morning, Mr. Chair. Peter DeMarco on behalf of the County of Orange, who also opposed the reasons stated. And would just add to the Vice Chair's point that according to the analysis in Orange County, this would cost taxpayers in total of one-time and ongoing costs of $26.6 million for the reasons that the Vice Chair stated earlier. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other in opposition? Any further questions? Would you like to close?
I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your time.
And thanks for the, it's kind of a long hearing. We only had a couple of bills.
All I gotta say that, you know, the states created these counties. They've had over 150 years to do the right thing, to increase their seats because of the population changes, yet they've chosen not to. So this bill is necessary. I urge support for SCA 8. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. We have a motion. Moved by Senator Hernandez. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn. No. Wynn, no. Bell. Bell, aye. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock.
No.
Morlock, no. Pavlik. You have 3-2.
3-2. Measures open. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Co-author, Senator Runner. Appreciate it. Thank you for your patience on this effort. Obviously, a lot of us in this committee have a lot of interest. Okay, next file item is file item number 3, AB 35. Assemblymember Chu.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I appreciate your consideration of AB 35, which would increase our state's affordable housing tax credit by $300 million for the construction and rehabilitation of affordable housing, which includes rural housing, SROs, special need housing, among others. This is part of the affordable housing package that was assembled by Speaker Tony Atkins, who's a joint author of this bill. I also want to take a moment and thank our Republican co-authors and the committee consultants for their work. The problem that we are trying to address with this bill, our state, as you all know, is in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. We have in California a shortfall of 1.5 million affordable homes. California has 13 of the 14 least affordable metropolitan housing areas in the country, 21 of the least affordable cities in the country. In my city alone, 60% of our low-income residents spend over half their paychecks on rent, with thousands of residents evicted or forced to move in recent years. This housing crisis is driving poverty and income inequality. Since 2000, we've seen our state's median incomes fall by 8%, while rental prices have increased by 21%. We live in a state with 12% of our country's population, but 20% of our country's homeless, 500,000 homeless kids, 1.5 million families who don't have access to an affordable home. I think we all know in part why we have gotten here. When we eliminated redevelopment and we exhausted state housing bonds, most recently Prop 1C, we reduced affordable housing funding by close to $2 billion. There is no permanent source of funding for housing. We currently have a $70 million housing tax credit program, which is completely oversubscribed, as well as a federal low-income housing tax credit, which is completely untapped by our state. Now, when I spoke to the chairman about this bill, he asked a question which I heard earlier in the discussion: why this tax credit? How does this tax credit compare? And I, at his request, have circulated to you a chart that lays out what we leverage with the $300 million that we are talking about. First and foremost, the $300 million will leverage an additional $600 million worth of federal funds. $200 million in the form of a 4% federal tax credit, another $400 million in the form of the federal tax-exempt bond authority. So that's close to $1 billion. And in fact, if Senator Bell's SB 377 bill passes, which this committee passed and your body passed, around fixing the tax implications of our tax credit, that would mean another $100 million on top of what we're talking about. In addition to that, this is a bill, if you just start from the bottom of this chart, it would lead to an additional $90 million a year of increased taxes and fees paid to local government. It would result in thousands of new jobs created annually in the construction of those homes. The third pie chart, I think, is actually probably the most interesting. It leverages $1 billion of private investment. So the ratio that is suggested is that private capital is attracted at a ratio of about 3 to 1, and it is estimated that the $300 million worth of tax credit would lead to about $2 billion worth of government and private sector funding. And then if you talk about additional expenses that we save as a society when it comes to reducing the cost for our homeless, when it comes to health care, public services, the impact of homelessness on children, as well as I know Senator Pavley, if she were here, I would talk for a moment about the impact on the environment. When you have more affordable housing, what we see today is people are forced to drive longer distances, which adds to congestion and environmental impacts, which obviously comes with a cost. Let me just close by saying, from my perspective, I don't think there's another tax credit that could demonstrate the type of multiplier effects that we're talking about. I want to thank the 250 organizations that are supporting this, and with that, would like to move to witnesses. Unless, Mr. Chairman, you have a question.
I have just a quick observation that I want you to add to this chart. I think it's very good, but I think you got one other dimension you need to add here as you go forward with this, and that is you've got a $90 million benefit to local government. If you contact the Department of Finance, they can talk to you about the economic feedback effect. Leader Olson, who was here, was talking about doing her tax credits for early childhood, preschool stuff, and it wasn't costing the general fund any money. Here you're asking for a tax credit of $300 million. What does that mean in law? Let's look at the state side of this. What does that mean in direct loss revenues? The question that Senator Morlock will ask you, and then measure that against what the increase in income tax will be, payroll tax will be. We know that infrastructure has a 76% economic feedback effect. So if you borrow $1 from the government and the government lends it in the bond, you're really only borrowing 24 cents because of the economic feedback effect. I would venture to guess that in addition to the $90 million this throws off for local government, that this is probably a net negative in terms of if on one side of the balance sheet you're losing revenue, but on the other side of the balance sheet you're gaining revenue. I would venture to guess that this is a net plus when you talk to the Department of Finance. I think that would be a very important argument as this thing moves forward. You can let your witnesses. Witnesses in favor.
Thank you kindly. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Megan Kirkaby. I'm Policy Director for California Housing Partnership. We're a 25-year-old state-created nonprofit dedicated to preserving housing affordable to California's lowest income households. We have assisted California developers to leverage more than $6 billion in private and public capital and provided technical assistance to over 10,000 people on housing policy, finance, and research. As you heard, California is a leader in the nation, but our severe shortage of affordable homes has also made us a leader in poverty. California has the highest percentage of people living in poverty of any state when you start to factor in housing costs. And there isn't a single county in California that has sufficient number of affordable rental homes for our extremely low and very low income households. AB 35 can help us address our housing crisis and fight poverty, but it also has far-reaching benefits, including dramatic health and public service cost savings. So in addition to the feedback loop you're speaking to, we've seen from numerous studies that there is substantial savings from providing homes to the formerly homeless. A New York study showed more than $12,000 in annual savings per person for formerly homeless individuals able to move into affordable housing. And those savings covered 95% of the housing program costs with just that savings alone. The affordable housing is also an important driver for economic growth through both the job creation that comes from home building, as well as the ability to ensure our employers that they can house a diverse workforce in this state. We also see improved education outcomes and lower dropout rates when children don't have to move as frequently due to the availability of affordable housing and a stable home. There's environmental savings from the sustainable construction of multifamily homes, as well as energy efficiency. And our very well and respected and established tax credit program further incentivizes each of these benefits by providing points for energy efficiency, building near many jobs and services and transit, which further reduce vehicle miles traveled while providing additional access, as well as supportive services to serve special needs populations. So because of these incentives, the strongest projects rise to the top and we see the greatest return on the state's investment. So California Housing Partnership strongly supports AB 35 as a method to alleviate poverty, activate California's economy, and increase the supply of affordable homes in California.
Did you do a cap and trade analysis on this? And, you talk generally about GHGs and its impact, but we have 375, the Steinberg measure. You've got cap and trade and the standards that deter and money available. I mean, it seems to me that you should, when you do the diagnostic beyond the generalities, you should factor those numbers into the equation.
We have some data on that we'd be happy to share with you. This program does incentivize building denser homes near transit as well as near.
But I know, but there's cash available, cap and trade cash available. I mean, that then could offset the costs and further impact the positive aspect on the balance sheet. I'm just telling you, there's a lot of money you're leaving on the table here that you need to analyze in determining its benefit as we grapple with this issue that Senator Hernandez talked about with respect to tax credits. And what do we do if, in fact, you are fundamentally distinguished because of your ability to get a broader economic feedback effect, because you can tap into other funds, you lessen the impact on the general fund so that it enhance both all of the social and other benefits for this, but change the economic numbers on how we analyze it as a committee. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and members. Marina White with the California Housing Consortium. Just want to highlight a couple of the comments that both the author and my colleague have mentioned. As you know, the state is in a dire housing crisis. 32% of Californians spend over 50% of their income on their housing, and coupled with that, we've had a 79% reduction in federal, state, and local resources since 2008. The tax credit program, both the state and federal together, are two of the most important housing production programs. And since their inception, have produced over 300,000 homes in California and created 340,000 jobs. And to harken back to the chair's comments about the economic feedback, the creation of those homes and jobs has generated over $32 billion in local income and over $12 billion in local tax revenues. So we will continue to do the economic analysis on that feedback, but we already have that for the large production since in the last 30 years. And like the author said, this is a unique program and different than a lot of the other tax credit programs because it leverages so much funding at the federal level. So we urge your aye vote today.
Very good. Okay.
Mr. Chairman and members, Dan Carrick on behalf of the League of California Cities. Our support for this bill is very simple. I mean, we've lost most of the resources available in the state to produce affordable housing. Others have gone through all of the benefits and advantages of it, but we need to get more funds for affordable housing out there. There are lots of challenges we're facing in that issue area, and so therefore we support the bill.
Greg DeGere with the Arkin United Cerebral Palsy California Collaboration, the Developmental Disabilities Group. We think that people with developmental disabilities may have the single worst housing need of any community in California. Certainly they make up a large proportion of the homeless, and over the last few years, since residential programs for people with disabilities have been closing due to inadequate state payments that don't cover the cost, and that's continuing as the special session is dealing with. We only see that getting worse, so we support the bill.
Thank you, sir.